Hello, I'm Dr. James Bogash, Master of Health and Longevity and creator of Modern Health Myths, as well as the author of Migraines and Epilepsy, You Are Not Alone. So today we're going to talk about a link between epilepsy and epileptogenesis, so the development of epilepsy from that first seizure to first seizure to groupings of seizure and continual seizures that we know of as epilepsy. And also can't help but throwing in mitochondrial function and how cells generate energy. So over the years, we've become increasingly aware that inflammation plays a major role in the brain, everywhere, quite frankly, but in the brain especially as it relates to seizures. And so what ends up happening is different scenarios can set up inflammation. You can look at poor quality diet, genetics certainly play a role, environmental chemical exposures, head trauma. All of these things can set up inflammation, and that starts to damage and affect the way brain cells communicate with one another. So mainstream medicine looks at this and thinks, well, let's try some anti-inflammatories as treatment for seizures. And certainly that is where the newest research is going for finding new drugs to combat epilepsy and seizures, because the ones we have now don't always work that well. About 30% of the people are not helped by seizure medications. Like, it's a pretty big group. However, from my standpoint, instead of looking at drugs, let's look at how we can control inflammation, especially from the beginning. So if we have head trauma, if we have our first seizure, that is the time to hammer and become very aware of things that generate inflammation and work on controlling them. Diet plays a huge role. Going into a pro versus an anti-inflammatory diet is beyond the scope of this video, but we can look at things like all things that have been shown to help with seizures also help with inflammation. So you look at vitamin D, you look at magnesium, especially in the 3 and 8 form, you look at fish oils, look at a ketogenic diet, which can control inflammation. And all of these things, exercise, control inflammation. And they've all been shown in clinical studies to help with seizures. So it makes sense that these should absolutely be on your treatment plan. And if your neurologist has not talked to you about these, then it might be time to find a new one that is going to talk to you about these instead of just using medication. Because medications may be a temporary answer, but they're not going to fix your brain. There are no current anti-seizure medications, so AEDs, anti-epileptic drugs, that control inflammation. Like, that's a pretty astounding statement when we understand that things like inflammation are a major player, but none of the drugs actually affect inflammation. Like, they're not fixing the problem. So paying attention to inflammation as it relates to the brain is an important aspect of both stopping seizures from developing as well as controlling them or even getting rid of seizures, which is never anything we talk about, but the reality is if we make the right changes, that is always on the list of possibilities. Also talking about energy in the brain, so the mitochondrial function and how we develop ATP is another important factor. I go into all of that in quite a bit of detail in my book. I'm not going to go into that in the video here, but those are definitely tools that we need to manage any type of brain disorder, regardless of what the diagnosis is. As always, I'll post the link to this particular study in the comment section. Make sure you share this video with somebody who you think needs this information. Subscribe to the channel and like the video.